Hi, we're here with Beth Barrie, Vice Provost for Teaching and Learning Innovation at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. Beth, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Before we get into all of the innovation, and I'm super excited about this conversation, can you give us the two-sentence backstory? When did UNLV decide to get serious about online, and what problem were you trying to solve?
Well, UNLV has been offering online courses for a long time. I think they started in the late 90s, maybe mid-90s. I think when it comes to programs, when they really got serious was when MGM Resorts International reached out because they were interested in creating a program similar to the partnership that ASU and Starbucks had. And at that time, at the undergraduate level, we had no fully online program. So MGM was looking to cover all the tuition for their employees that would earn online degrees. And so the partnership ended up being with the Nevada State Higher Education as a system. And so the community colleges were involved in that as well. But we had no undergraduate degrees online. And so then it was like, okay, well, we need to get some so that these employees of MGM Resorts International have opportunities. They're only funding online tuition. And so that then became, okay, we better make this an opportunity that these employees can have.
Okay, so you've been in this game for a while.
A little bit, yeah. The good news was because we had been offering online courses so long, we had hundreds of online courses, just not grouped into leading to credentials, right? You know, there were unofficially, you could earn degrees by taking online courses, but it wasn't a deliberate, like we're going to create a pathway to completion in the online format.
Okay. And so you've been doing this for a while, but in the last couple of years, obviously, there's been a lot changing. I'm sure you were very well prepared for the COVID pandemic as opposed to a lot of other institutions. How do you feel like it's all been changing in the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, definitely the pandemic gave us a boost, you know, before we are actually adjusting to the new reality. So we used to have to really try to persuade and, you know, convince people that things could be done online and that it wasn't lesser than. And so once faculty, you know, so many faculty were resistant, had to teach online, they kind of got a taste for it. And they're like, oh, you know, if I had some help to do this better, it was two things, right? If I had help to do this better, this could really work. And, oh, I'm doing it fine, even though it wasn't really, you know, online. You know, emergency remote teaching is not the same as a well-developed online course. And so it's kind of trying to convince people, okay, yeah, you're doing it, but you really don't know what you're doing, so let us help you. And then the demand for helping people who are like, I want to really do this well. And so we have developed skills in trying to de-escalate people. You know, before the pandemic, people would be like, online is going to ruin higher education. And they would be, you know, just into any conversation that myself and the teams I work with, there was not hostility, but in some situations, there was a lot of, you know, anger and fear directed at us. And we're like, hey, we're friendly. We're just here to help, right? You know, we're just trying to prepare you for the future. And now people like welcome us in. So that's been a little bit of a switch, right? We used to, what can we do to convince people? And now people are convinced. And so we're like, oh, okay, we don't have to do that anymore. How do we? It's a good shift to have to make, but it is a little bit of a different, like when you go in preparing to try to de-escalate people and they're happy to see you, we're like, what just happened?
Okay, so give me the counter argument to that too. Why, when people were more resistant to online higher education, how did you convince them?
Well, you know, we built a team that in their job description, it said that their role is to help people move along a continuum from technophobia to technophilia. So we start wherever they're at on that continuum and try to encourage them and support them, walk alongside them as they get closer. So maybe you have somebody who is really an early adopter and we're going to help them go to the next level. And maybe you have someone who like, where's the on switch on my computer, right? You know, and we sit beside them and say, here's the on button. And, you know, so it really is just to to be supportive, do the heavy lifting where we can, to try and a lot of times it's fear-based. I think one of the things that I've come to realize is that, as you're earning a PhD, you're kind of trained to believe you are the expert, and you become the expert. The day you defend your dissertation, you are the expert in your dissertation topic that day. Maybe the next day somebody posts something new and you're no longer the exact expert, but so people have expertise in an area. It's very unnerving to be a novice in another area when you're used to being an expert. And so we just really try to remember that, and it takes just some compassion and empathy on the side of the teams that I work with to sometimes people are afraid, get angry, like fear causes anger, and some people will recognize that they're afraid and they'll name it. So we try to help people name that, like, hey, it's okay that you don't know what we're doing. That's why we're here, right? And we don't expect you to know this. And so that's the approach we take. Now, we're taking, and we still have some, holdouts. And so, we still use those skills. I'm not saying everyone loves online, right?
So I know that you've been a couple steps ahead of the industry for a while now. You were saying that even during the pandemic, you had already kind of figured out how to design a well-made online course versus people just taking their in-person courses and bringing them online. How have you tried to keep that couple steps ahead going as more and more people are getting used to online schooling and more people are kind of opening their minds to the different ways that higher ed can be done?
Yeah. One of the things we think a lot about is the engagement aspect. Faculty, it is different teaching an online course, and they often miss that in-person engagement. And students do seem to engage differently in online space. And so we are constantly trying to think of ways to build a sense of community, to help faculty feel like they're connecting in as meaningful a way in the online space as they do in person, and also to some extent help them see it will be slightly different, but it can still be meaningful and rewarding. One of the initiatives we have for our online programs is that we're helping the departments develop a course carousel. So predictive scheduling in particular, is a challenge at many universities. UNLV is no exception. And in the online space, because it can be many degrees that have been around for a while end up with lots of electives, and the degree plan can be somewhat complex. And so we're trying to work with the departments that want to offer an exclusively online pathway to a credential, think through what you need to be able to tell these online students. You can rely on these courses. We have thought through a 4-year, they do this in the in-person space, but there's a little bit more flexibility there. And so we work with them to develop a course carousel. And then for the courses that they put into their carousel, we work to develop departmental model courses. So a course that the department can assign to anyone, because up front it's acknowledged that this course can be shared with anyone. So typically faculty don't have to share. They often do, but they don't have to. So a departmental course up front, they work with the Office of Online Education, and so we can incorporate a few of these community building aspects, and then that creates, and we try to make those departmental courses what we call Agile. So it will be a fully online course that has an accompanying instructor manual that says, if you want to use these same materials to teach in person, here's what you would hide. Here's how you would set up we use Canvas. So here's how you would set up the Canvas shell. Mm-hmm. And if you want to use these materials to teach hybrid, here are in-class activities, and here's how you would set up the Canvas shell for teaching hybrid. So that's one of the ways you're trying to incorporate more engagement strategies. And when we have those departmental courses, then that frees up an instructor to truly spend more time on the regular and substantive interaction. They're not building the course while they're trying to teach it. Typically in person, you can kind of be like, what should we talk about today? And then you go to class, right? That doesn't obviously work in the online space. And so many faculty who develop on their own are kind of hustling to get the materials organized, and when they're given a departmental course, all the materials are organized, and then they can add their unique voice and perspective and build those meaningful relationships. Departmental model courses are, not, you have to explain the value of them, because it is to some people, you're maybe threatening my academic freedom. And we're not intending to do that at all. And it is kind of awkward at first to be given a whole course, because you're used to kind of designing it the way you want to do it and put things in the order you want to put them in. And so that's another thing that we try to help people understand. This will feel different, but you'll eventually come to enjoy it, because we do get that feedback of, this, at first, and then people that stick with us long enough, they're like, this is so great. Now I can spend time, responding to the student who on the discussion board or what have you, because I'm not having to do all of this in building of the course.
And how did you figure out that was the way to do it? When I think about like innovation in those kinds of roles, I always think of a lot of experimentation. Was it trial and error? How did you decide that this departmental course was the way to do it? Did you try other experiments too?
Yes. How did we end up with it just, we have a few department chairs that we brainstorm with. And the other thing with the departmental model course is, one, our School of Public Policy and Leadership in particular is able to bring in some excellent professors of practice. And so, for example, we had a county commissioner who was teaching a course. And obviously, he does not have time to be putting in a lot of resources into Canvas. And when he was teaching, I had a graduate assistant that was helping me as an instructional designer. And the graduate assistant took the course that we had just kind of put the shell together in this departmental course. And I really, this was early on in the days when we were like, well, maybe we can build these shells out with this content. And I really saw the value of the departmental course, because the county commissioner had all of these amazing real life stories. Mm-hmm. And the graduate assistant had already taken the course. And so he could be in the course, kind of administering the Canvas portion of it. So it just really opened up. And that's where I really saw, we've hit on something, right? This kind of expands not only the pool of people that might be able to teach a course, but also frees up the instructor to focus on the interactions with the student.
Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it's been able to scale the student interaction part?
Yes. Yeah. And we got a little boost with the Department of Education further defining regular and substantive interaction. So anytime you're talking about like, hey, if you don't do this, you have to do regular and substantive interaction now, because otherwise we can't give financial aid to these students. It's like, and here, if you had a departmental course, that would be a lot easier. So that was a nice boost for us.
Okay, wait, tell me more about that. What is the definition?
Well, regular and substantive interaction is it's nuanced, but basically in 2020 or 2021, through negotiated rulemaking, the term has been in the department bed for a long time. So it distinguishes between a correspondence course. A correspondence course does not have regular and substantive interaction, but a distance education course does. Correspondence courses are not eligible for federal financial aid funds. And so you can see, if you get put into the correspondence course category, it makes our admissions office real, upset, right? Because that's a way that they recruit students in, is that we can help with financial aid. And so it is basically, you can't just put a course together and let it run itself, right? The instructor has to be present. There has to be a way to monitor that the instructor is actually present. It's not just a shell with a bunch of PDFs and some multiple choice quizzes.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So you have to make sure that whatever experiments you're running, whatever strategies you're trying, are able to increase the number of substantive interactions at the
yeah, and ensure that they're happening. And for years, we help design and build the courses in partnership with the faculty member, but how they get taught was, it's a shared governance system, right? And so we didn't really have any purview over like, hey, you're teaching, like it's designed well, but you're executing it badly, right? And, if that was happening. And now with regular and substantive interaction, we actually do have more of a legitimacy when we say, well, we're going to help monitor if this is happening on behalf of the institution because it's related to compliance.
Okay. So you have departmental courses, they have regular and substantive interactions. You have this history of being able to do it for a while. Mm-hmm. What are you excited to experiment with now? There are so many new technologies out. There's so much new, like you were talking about earlier, acceptance of this space and of the alternatives that it can go into. What experiments are you going to try now and what are you excited about?
Well, we've got some different experiments. We have a new immersive learning initiative, and people are very excited about that. It's going to be amazing. I think in the online space, what we're trying to do for our exclusively online students, we're trying to find departments that would include some immersive learning experience. So, the headsets, the MetaQuest, or I think they have a different name now. There's a couple different versions, but we would need to find a program that would include those experiences in multiple courses so that if an exclusively online student purchases the headset, they're using it in multiple courses rather than just one. So it can be, once it's listed in the registration as a textbook, they can use their financial aid to purchase the headset. But we don't want it just to be a one-off. That seems like a waste of money and not a good use. So it's working with faculty at the program level to say, okay, what are the points at which an immersive learning experience would be helpful? And let's put that in multiple courses. So we're excited. We're going to start with our bachelor's in social work, because that being able to read body language and all of that seems like a really, and we have some people who are excited about immersive learning in that department. And so that should be probably, that will be our first spot. We also have a Dreamscape Learn, a physical, beautiful setup in our library that'll be opening in, I think, next week. And so that's exciting. And people have a lot of energy around that. We have a great director of immersive learning. I personally am more excited about the opportunity to work with faculty. Our instruction design team, we have a couple different teams that work directly with faculty. And with the rise of skill-based hiring, and, there's been a lot of, before it was comprehensive learner records. Now we're talking about learning and employment records, kind of expanding beyond just the learning record. And as skills-based hiring gains momentum and more employers and states are dropping degree requirements, our students need to be able to signal these are our skills, right? People aren't just saying the bachelor's degree qualifies you. And we already are in consultation with faculty. What are the objectives of your course? Well, I think higher ed is speaking one language and employers are speaking a different language. And so we can help higher ed translate, here's our learning outcomes or our course objectives. Those can be skill-based. They can use skills language. They can use skills libraries that exist. WGU has the Open Skills Network library that they put together. Lightcast now has a skills feature in it. And so I'm excited to, as we work on departmental courses, transitioning those into using more skills-based language and truly aligning the assessment. If you say the student will get this skill by the end of the course, how are they demonstrating that skill to you? And we are already doing that. We've been doing that for years, but not necessarily helping faculty with the skills language and connecting it to a skills library. And so that a student, we have micro-credentials at UNLV on the credit-bearing side. So that gives us an opportunity. If the department wants to offer a micro-credential, we work with them and help them find the skills, and then they identify the assessments. We help, kind of more authentic assessments. So that metadata goes into the micro-credential in a way that on a traditional transcript never has. We don't have a learning employment record yet, but I keep talking it up. And, it's a major change in higher ed to switch to a learning employment record as a transcript.
Yeah.
And so, people don't particularly love that I keep talking about that, because I think they realize it's coming, these digitally verified credentials. And we're so busy doing, trying to improve our completion rate, everyone already has a full-time job. And I'm like, hey, let's redo our transcript and all the systems that go with it. Right. So,
yeah. It's so funny that you said that learners need to signal to their employers. That's actually exactly why this podcast is called The Signals, is about that signal. So super relevant to us too. I have two questions about what you just said. One, do you have to completely overhaul how you're grading and assessing and all that? And if so, how? And then two, how are you bringing the faculty along with you?
So there isn't necessarily a need to overhaul the grading.
Okay.
It does open up conversations about authentic assessment, so this is one of the reasons why where I really think momentum is building. I've seen signals and drivers, the past few years, but now with AI, everyone is rethinking their assessments anyway. And they all have to become more authentic so that students won't just dump it into a LLM. Mm-hmm. And so if we're already having those conversations, we can say, hey, what's your, we can help brainstorm with you about some authentic assessments, and let's make the outcomes skill-based instead of, so it's just kind of this perfect storm of opportunity. And how do we bring faculty along? It's the same thing we've been doing for years, right? We sit beside them. We, serve as a thought partner, and faculty, the learning and employment record. The interesting thing about my conversations around learning and employment records or skills-based teaching is that when I explain the concept to people who don't know about it, they're like, oh yeah, like, no, it has so much face validity. Yeah. And yet there's systems in place that are going to make it hard to actualize, right? And so you just kind of have to believe, and our current president is the person years ago who tapped me to help in the online space. And one of his mantras back in the day is incremental improvement and adjust your expectations. Because as someone, I'm like, we got to do this, and the sense of urgency, and so he would always remind me of that, and so it's incremental improvement, and I think we should do it tomorrow, but I have to adjust my expectations of we'll get there.
What you were saying about the authentic assessment, can you give me an example of one of those that you're like really happy with? One of the ways that you were able to kind of adjust a course to do a more authentic assessment that is more skill-based, and that's actually been working out. I think a lot of people
we were experimenting with this. I think it was even before the pandemic. I was really excited about micro-credentials, and again, we have a really good relationship with the School of Public Policy and Leadership, and so I sat down with one of their faculty members who was teaching financing public goods course. So basically a finance class. And I was asking her, I said, Helen, if someone graduated with your bachelor's degree and was hired in their job, what would they be asked to do? And, do any of your assignments, is there something that, so Clark County is a very large county, and a lot of our graduates end up working in the county or locally, right? So Helen is aware of, and has contacts. And so she knows how the finance work that's done in the public sector here locally. And she said, I've been thinking that that they would be asked to do this when they get hired, but I don't have an assignment like that, but I've been thinking about an assignment. I've been thinking about switching it out. And so it was just that conversation of getting the faculty member to imagine that, this student who's just gotten hired, they've taken your course. Can you do anything in your course that mirrors what they're going to be doing as an entry-level employee? And so it's that conversation. And we are trying to, I'm working with my colleagues in workforce development. Let's bring employers to these discussions, right? So that Helen doesn't have to imagine. She's actually hearing from employer, well, we hire in the first year or two, they're doing this. If you had an assignment in your course like that, that'd be amazing, right? So kind of co-creating these assignments, and the teams that I'm on, we just facilitate the conversation. We just say, this is possible. We're happy to help schedule the appointment, ask the questions, right? And yeah, so that's how that happens.
So let's say that you're able to transition all of your courses to authentic assessments. So they all do it and they all are skills-based. How would you be able to measure success there? Is it a measurement of students getting those jobs? Is it their success in the jobs a couple years in? What is the main thing? If you could pick one metric to fully max out, which one are you picking?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we have a lot of experimenting to do in that area. I think initially what we need to set up is a feedback loop from employers. So the strategy I'm currently using is doing this through the micro-credentialing process. You have to submit, they go through our curriculum review process in order to get permission to offer a micro-credential. And so those will all be skill-based. And so if I could say to employers, if we had a feedback loop of when you hire people that have these micro-credentials, are they more prepared than people who don't have the micro-credentials? The thing with micro-credentials or skills-based hiring, skills-based learning is there's two components to it. I don't think employers are all that great in identifying their skills. They'll say critical thinking. Well, what do you mean when you say critical thinking? Or communication, right? I need them to be a good team, teamwork. It's like, well, what does it actually look like? And that's that conversation at the assessment level. That's where the rubber meets the road. So tell me what teamwork looks like in your employment setting. And a faculty member might be able to kind of incorporate into that to a scenario-based assignment. So getting that feedback loop of, do these people seem more prepared? And then, of course, tracking all of this, you kind of have to live in it ideally, and then the practicality of it takes a little while to figure out. But so that's where I would start. And then watching their career trajectory, right? Do they get promotions faster? Or, I do think that the true way to see if these are impactful is to follow their what happens in the workforce.
Is there anything that could convince you that it's not a good idea? Is there anything that you could see that would make you be like, oh, never mind, let's go back to the more traditional form?
Well, and another wonderful question, and I think I'm going to answer it in a slightly different, from a slightly different perspective. So one of the things, years ago when Google came out with their 6-month certificates and announced that they would hire people who have their certificate would get this same weight as if they had a bachelor's degree. And that made a lot of sense to me, right? If the people have the skills, go ahead and hire them. But the more I've lived with that, what does society lose when more people are not taking general education courses, being exposed to thoughts and ideas that they don't know are valuable? Right? I do think that it's within the general education courses that you often learn things you wouldn't seek out on your own. So I do wonder that, if we are so skills based, what about the liberal arts education piece of things for our society? The ability to hear perspectives different than your own and not feel threatened and be open. I think yesterday's tragedy is a really good example of that. And I don't think skills-based hiring we're going to see more tragedy like that. But I think our society is at a place where we are having a hard time hearing ideas different than our own. And it's in those general education courses where you're exposed to people that are taking different career paths as well.
Yeah.
Right? Those courses are a mixing ground for people who might not bump into each other otherwise. My academic background is with the National Park Service. So for years, my dissertation is on the programs that park rangers get, what makes them meaningful to the visitors. And I believe that this is obviously an alternative career for me. And for a while, I mourned that because the national parks are amazing and it was a wonderful, first career. But I finally made peace with it because I realized what the passion I had for the work I was doing with the National Park Service is national parks are also a place where people from different backgrounds and different perspectives come, and they come to a park ranger program and they hear different perspectives. So the same thing happens at a university. And so if it all becomes very vocational, what do we lose? I wonder about that. But I do think that a degree needs to lead to a job. So, and some faculty, some people in the academy don't think it's their responsibility to help people get jobs. So I don't know.
I do know what you mean. I think that it's so important to keep that in mind. And especially if it's not like everybody was going to college in the first place, and now we're changing that. College was not originally meant for everybody, nor has it ever really been suitable for everyone. And if we're simply expanding access and expanding more options and more opportunities, then I think that can be really great. And also I see your point about there could be something that we're losing, and we might just have to figure out how does that come back in a different way. Does your liberal arts education have to happen between the ages of 18 and 22? Or can it come in your job? Can it come in all of these other ways? Can it come in through your community? Does it have to be through college?
Absolutely. Or a national service corps, right?
Yeah.
Like a year-long service, right? There's so many. I don't know that I am a very practical person, but I think in some ways I'm an idealist as well, right? That, to your point, there are other ways for people to learn how to respect differences and talk to others, and see the humanity in people who aren't like themselves. And what would a society look like where we had a national service component kind of interwoven into our culture? But for now, there's a lot of work still to be done. Like I was saying, employers need to understand how to articulate skills better. Students also need to be able to articulate the skills they have. So that's a whole nother realm that for learning employment records to work, employers need to learn a little bit, and students need to be able to learn how to speak in skills. So I talk to our CIO and I say, well, can you stand me up like a proof of concept? And he'll say, well, it's not just if you build it, they will come. He's like, employers aren't asking us for this, Beth. Why do you keep, asking me about this? And I said, well, when he says, it's not if you build it, they will come. I said, but if you don't build me something, I can't get them to come, right? Like they need to see it, right? So it's kind of a chicken and the egg kind of thing.
Incremental progress and adjusted expectations.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
We will first solve the skilling thing, and then we will get all those liberal arts ideas into everyone's life in some other way.
Exactly.
And we'll change the whole world. I do have one last question for you. With all of the stuff that you've learned at UNLV, if there were one experiment that you could recommend to any public university to run in the next semester, what do you think they should do that could make a real dent in student success?
Being situated in a state that we have, when I started this, there was 76% of the adult population did not have a 4-year credential.
Mm-hmm.
We're now gotten that down to 74%. But that to me, when I was looking at where should I prioritize my time, it's at the undergraduate level. And so in order to increase the number of undergraduate learning opportunities, I would say if you're at a university that is wanting to do that, creating a gen ed core, right? So I got this idea from the University of Arizona. I started into the leadership role in online ed back in 2015. And so I went to a conference, and the University of Arizona was talking about their Gen Ed Academy that they had created. So they brought faculty that were teaching Gen Ed courses together, and they interwove, like so philosophy and chemistry, there was some connections there, or astronomy, right there. And that was amazing. So those faculty managed to make the courses complement each other in a way that I have not been able to do. But I was able to reach out. They're so generous. They helped me understand how they made that happen. And then for 4 years, I pestered the provost. I'm like, hey, we need this Gen Ed Academy. And then when COVID hit and there was some stimulus funding, he said, okay, go ahead and take some funding and create that Gen Ed, what we called it Gen Ed Academy, which now I know that academy is not quite the right word, but we got 35 faculty together and we worked with advising of, if you were an online student, what would be the most efficient way to get your Gen Eds? And we provided incentive funding to those faculty, and they developed their courses together. The content doesn't complement each other, but in the online space, the navigation is the same. The way they word the sections of their assignments are the same. So there's kind of the cognitive load of going from course to course in the Gen Eds is reduced there. And so what that does is now when I talk to department chairs about, hey, what if you made an opportunity for exclusively online students to earn your degree? Before, they're like, well, I don't know if they'd be able to get their Gen Ed. So they had this excuse of like, well, I don't know if they'd be able to get the degree because there's all those Gen Eds. And they say, well, we took care of that for you. So you only have to worry about your core courses and your electives. And that has been a game changer. We had, like I mentioned, when MGM reached out, we had 0 undergraduate degrees. We have 17 now, and I think there's 2 more coming. So we're not ASU, but that's a lot of growth in the past couple of years.
Wow, that is a lot of growth.
That solving the Gen Ed availability. And so working with those departments, we provide some incentives so that they offer that course every single semester. So, kind of this consistent set of 38 courses, 35 faculty, the math faculty develop their co-requisite courses at the same time. And so having that available to exclusively on students and all students, if their seats are available, anyone can sit in that course. Every single semester creates, it removes a barrier.
Yeah. And it's also
not super innovative, but it's just, sometimes the innovation is in processes and procedures, right? Not necessarily headsets and all of that, right?
I totally agree, especially with what you said about just having the courses look the same. Sometimes you start a new technology and you're like, oh, that's going to take me a week to figure out. I just can't even start right now. And if you know that the courses are going to look the same, they're going to feel comfortable, it makes it way easier to jump into it and kind of reduces that barrier.
Yeah, I had a colleague at a conference who used this analogy, and I'm so glad I heard it, because every time I use it on campus, everyone immediately, there's some resistance to here, use this template, right? Like, well, I like this being on the top, and so there's always a little bit of resistance. People want autonomy, but when I say, in an in-person course, students walk in and they know there's chairs that are going to have a place for them to sit. Right. And the chairs are going to be on the floor, not necessarily attached to the ceiling. Right. And so in an online course, a student goes in and it might have chairs and it might not. Some people don't put their syllabus in. Right. So there might not be chairs. And if there are chairs, they might be on the ceiling, and so when people are like, oh, that makes sense. It would be nice to be a student. And every time I go into the course, things are in the same spot.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Well, Beth, thank you so much. And if people are interested in learning more about UNLV's innovation, is there anywhere they can go to learn more?
We have a teaching and learning commons, and that has a nice website that's built out. It connects all of the innovation, the home of the innovation lives in that teaching and learning commons. Our UNLV Online, they work very closely. So I would say the teaching and learning commons web presence has lots of different updates and calls for, hey, faculty, would you want to help with this? Or, yeah.
Perfect. The Teaching and Learning Commons. I'm excited to check it out. Well, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation. I appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff.